I'm going to talk about this much maligned juniper called Blaauws juniper. Blaauws is spelled B-L-A-A-U-W. It's a Dutch name, and I believe in the 19th century, a Dutchman called Blaauws went to Japan and came across this Chinese juniper, Juniperus chinensis, and he brought it back to Europe. And because he brought it back to Holland, it was always named after him as Blaauws juniper. I remember when I started doing bonsai seriously in the 1970s, there weren't a lot of Chinese junipers imported from Japan because there were only like one or two importers of bonsai in the UK. So the hobbyists could only access this juniper which was produced in Holland called Blaauws. What you see here are all Blaauws juniper or Blaauws juniper. They have a slightly bluish tinge to it when they are grown well, but when they are grown for a long time, they turn the traditional green color. Many people think that this is not a proper juniper, but I can assure you it is a proper juniper for the very reason that it has been originally sourced from Japan by Mr. Blaauws, the Dutchman, and he introduced it to Europe. So that is the history of this tree. These are Blaauws junipers in different stages and different sizes. This is a Blaauws juniper which is supposed to be about 6 to 8 years old. It is every bit, I would say, 50 to 60 centimeter tall, but it hasn't got much of a trunk. And they produce usually multiple trunks, and if they're left to their own devices, they form this vase shape, inverted V shape. Can you see like an inverted V? I have grown several of these in my field, and they are over 10 foot tall, and they're still this V shape style. So this is how the Blaauws juniper normally grows. So these, we have them contract grown, that means they're grown specially for us. And if you look at the trunk, they're all about a couple of inches thick at the base. Some of them have got single trunks, very nice. And some of them have got multiple trunks. But every single one of these trees can be used very effectively for bonsai. The most famous case study, I would say, is found in my Bonsai Masterclass book. This is the original Bonsai Masterclass which I wrote in 1986 and published in 87. And I show the progress of a Blaauws juniper that I made. This tree was picked up from the Chelsea Flower Show in 1984, the first year I won the gold medal. And at the end of the Chelsea Flower Show, they sell off all the plants. So one of the conifer growers had a Blaauws on his stand. So I bought it from him for, I think at that time, £5, 1984. At the end of the show, special price to a fellow exhibitor. And that was the tree when I just purchased it. I brought it back to the nursery, and this is what I did. I teased the roots out and planted it in one of these Stewart plastic green trays. And literally, from this to this was achieved in literally one day. I just wired the branches outwards because they tend to grow at a V shape, but I just wired them straight and put it in a seed tray. These seed trays are about 20 inches long, so that tree would be at least 60 to 70 centimeter tall. And I did accept a challenge because I was at that time the chairman of the British Bonsai Association. So the member said, "What are you going to do with it?" So I said, "Mark my words, in 2 years I will show that tree at Chelsea." So this is the tree after 2 years. From this to this in 2 years. You see the heavy wiring, and that's in a Gordon Duffet pot. And I did show this tree in, I think, 1987 Chelsea, and I of course did win a gold at that show. This same tree, I will try and dig out a picture, is at Wisley. I'm going to Wisley tomorrow. I'll take a picture of that tree. It is massive. It's about 3 foot tall, and it's got a spread of 3 or 4 foot, and the trunk is massive. but it doesn't look like this. It looks completely different. Okay, several things about Blaauws I would like to explain. Many people think that, oh, Blaauws has that bluish color and bluish tinge. It's not really nice. But as I said earlier, if you leave it in a tight pot for a long time, you see the difference between this and this. These were the same batch. These I did not put into a bonsai pot, but these I put in a bonsai pot so that the roots get established. But I was going to shape them. I haven't started shaping them properly yet. They've only had some piece of a wire around it, but I'm going to show you what we would normally do with it. So they're kept in these pots so that they get acclimatized to the pot, and then the styling will begin. So all these trees, the same Blaauws, have been put in a pot and not fed so heavily, but we're going to work on it and create a shape. So you can see how they would shape up. Let me show you some other Blaauws. This is also a Blaauws juniper, and this is a tanuki that I made, if you remember. It's on one of the tanuki projects, and it's still got a bluish cast to it, but I've used it for wrapping around a dead trunk, and they have this lovely adult foliage, not juvenile foliage. They don't have juvenile foliage. Now, there's a lot of confusion between Itoigawa and other types of Chinese juniper. They're all Chinese juniper, but Itoigawa happens to be one of the most popular varieties of Chinese juniper today. And Itoigawa was only discovered, I would say, less than 100 years ago. It has been growing in Japan for a long time, but some collectors, Yamadori collectors, collected it years ago, and they've made it very popular. So they've been propagated by the million, I would say. It is a ubiquitous plant in Japanese nurseries now because it's the most fashionable. Why it is so fashionable is because the foliage is quite different. If you look closely, it's hard to explain, but the color for a start is slightly different, and it tends to be slightly finer than other junipers. Let me show you some cuttings. These are Blaauws cuttings, and these are Itoigawa cuttings. You see the difference in color. There's a slight difference in color, but it's very hard to distinguish the difference in needle size. It's a very, very subtle change in size of needle. If I can take you next to a kisu. Kisu, spelled K-I-S-U or K-I-S-O-O, is another variety of Chinese juniper. This is supposed to be kisu, but again, it's hard to distinguish. I think you get to realize how different it is when you compare it with other trees. Before I disappear to the larger part of the nursery, let me show you what my colleague Padma Priya has done. This is a Blaauws juniper styled from this material. So they're very versatile. This is the start of the tree, beautifully styled, and it's made from this material. And once it fills out, you won't recognize it. Let me take you now to our main growing area where we've got different types of juniper. Those of you who are seriously interested in bonsai, and especially those who like to grow junipers, will probably know already quite a lot about the different varieties of juniper. There are, I would say, 5 or 6 different types of Chinese juniper. This one, let's stop at this one. You see how floppy the growth is of this one. This is a large specimen which I'm growing on, and if you look closely, look at all these juniper berries. Juniper berries are used traditionally for making gin, but they're also used as a spice for cooking. But they have this very floppy habit. You can see how floppy it is. Very floppy. And usually the bonsai people don't like this variety because it's very hard to wire. It cannot stand up on its own. So they have this, what we call, not very nice habit of being loose. that's why people don't use it that much. Now, talking of blows, this is a raft that I made. I do a lot of rafts on the nursery. A raft, as you know, is a juniper that you lie on its side. You see, this is the base of the tree, and we lay it on the side and pull the branches up. So this is made a forest with one single tree. You can make a raft with that. And again, you can see the traditional Blaauws color. This is slightly bluish in tinge. So when Blaauws grow well, they are more blue than other junipers. Let me now walk you into the traditional juniper area. This, I think, is, even I find it hard to tell. I think this is Itoigawa. This definitely is Itoigawa because it was bought from an Itoigawa nursery. I'm trying to find a Blaauws juniper and a Itoigawa so that they're side by side. If we go here, you see there's so many trees. Now this is a tanuki that I also made, another tanuki, and this is used with Blaauws juniper. You see the thin stems. I use the branches to wrap around the trunk. So that is Blaauws juniper. But you see it has lost its bluish tinge. It's got more of the traditional green color. Now this is Itoigawa again. This is Itoigawa. I'm now taking you, now let me take you to this. These very dense trees are trees that we're growing on. Can you see how twisted the trunks are? But this is Kisu. This is Kisu. It's a denser tree and not as elegant as the Itoigawa. This is another Kisu here. This is another Kisu. Now when you come to this one, this is another raft that I made, and you can see this, the raft is more obvious. You can see the pot is this side, and the tree has been laid on the side and these big branches pulled up, and we've made a clump style or a forest with this. So this is Blaauws juniper. So I don't know whether you managed to understand the difference. Even I sometimes find it difficult to distinguish between Itoigawa and Kisu. Maybe when I get new supplies from Japan of Kisu and Itoigawa, it'll be easier to explain. But all I can say is that the Itoigawa has got slightly finer foliage than the Kisu, and certainly the Tohoku juniper, which is, I think, popularly known as the Hollywood juniper. They are slightly different. So this is where we grow our junipers to grow them big, and when they get big enough, we then style them. While I'm passing, there's another juniper which can be confusing, which is the European Sabina juniper. Now this is a beautiful specimen of Sabina, and if you look closely, it is slightly different from the Itoigawa. Let me bring a plant close and we can tell, okay, this is Kisu. You see this almost like a chamaecyparis. They are on flat fronds. And you see the bud back. I'm trying to regrow this so they do bud back from old wood. If you take the tips out, pinch the tips, they do bud back from old wood. So this is what I'm trying to do to this tree. I'm restyling this tree. So again, as I say, the more you work on them, the more you will begin to see the difference. So this is Kisu, this is Sabina juniper. And this is Kisu, and this is Itoigawa. I don't know whether you've become any the wiser from looking at this, but the more you work with these, the more you will be able to distinguish it. It's not an easy thing to distinguish, because even I get fooled by it. so don't despair. And by the way, I know many people have done lots of videos about juniper. What does shimpaku mean? Because I'm Chinese, I was told by my relatives that shimpaku and the Cantonese way of pronouncing the kanji character of shimpaku simply means ying pak. Ying pak means the true baksu. Pak is a cypress. True cypress is the Chinese translation of shimpaku or ying pak. So no big deal. Hope you've not been completely confused. So shimpaku or ying pak simply means the true cypress. There you go. So much for the theory of the different types of juniper. So don't get fooled when people tell you that shimpaku is a separate type of juniper. Shimpaku simply means juniper. And there are different types of juniper. Okay, so let's start work on it. So let's choose one of these and show you how I go about tackling this. So there's really no difference between these which are in bonsai training pots and these which are still in the flower pot. So let us take a more simple one and see where we get to. Okay, let's take one. There's so many. Let's take just one of these. Now these have been simply put in a bonsai training pot, and I did put one piece of wire to span those two branches because I wanted to open it out and give it more openness, creating the basic triangular structure. You must be wondering why I didn't cut all these branches off. So there's such a lot of videos being produced, how to make thick trunks, very confusing again. But I always reckon that there is no shortcut to creating thick trunks. It is just being patient, and when you're patient, the trunk will thicken in time. But you can help the process along by leaving these lower branches. The lower branches sometimes referred to as sacrificial branches. Sacrificial means that they are going to be sacrificed at some stage and they will be discarded for making a different style of tree. But meanwhile, while they are growing, like this branch here can be considered a sacrificial, and this has helped to thicken the base or the nebari here. I leave these as well. The thinner branches are usable. Again, not rocket science. A lot of people have already taught you how to make bonsai with junipers, choosing the thinner branches rather than using thicker branches. So you use these thin branches, you can get a tree this size, or you can go the other way and use the thick branches and get a larger tree. Now let's do something different, because everyone now have cottoned on or learnt the trick of using the thin branches. So we won't go down that route, not for this one. I will show you how I'm going to use every single branch so that I don't waste it and get a larger, fuller tree. When we run our nursery, people like large trees. They don't always like the smaller trees. So I'd like to keep these trunks thick and create a large shape or large size bonsai. Okay, some of these branches are already wired. Okay, I'm going to try and utilize everything that is available. So the first thing that strikes me is that I've got to create a triangular shape. Left to their own devices, the Blaauws goes as a vase shape, inverted V, or a proper V shape. So let's create a triangular shape by creating a base which is broad like this. So these, fortunately, are quite bendable and flexible. Not all trees have the same degree of flexibility. Some are easier to bend than others. So as you work more on plants, you will realize which trees are flexible and which are not. Okay, so what would I do with this? I will probably take this to the top and create a nice shape. I've put this wire on last year. It's done its job. I may have to put another thicker wire, so let's get this off, for the simple reason that if I'm going to put a thick wire over the trunk, it will be hard to remove this wire at a later stage because the thick wire will be overlaying on this thinner one. All these little tricks and processes are worth remembering. So we put the thickest wires on first and we wire the trunk first. I still haven't cut anything. I haven't decided which is the front or the back either. I will just wire everything to see how it turns out. So I'm going to wire this one and the apex together. So I've used the thickest grade of wire available, and this is 5mm wire. I don't usually go straight into such thick wire, but needs must, and I'm going to use it. So I'm going to measure how much wire I need. I'm going to take it right to the end. So I will take the wire to there, enough to extend there. I won't take it there, I would be wasting wire. Very conscious about waste. And it's also good wiring practice. Why waste? 2-branch principle. And let's get an anchor. Once you get an anchor, it's easier to ply the wire. See, in 1 year, it has already started to mark, but if you know me by now, you know that I'm never concerned about wire marks, because sometimes the wire marks makes the branches or trunks gnarled, and when they outgrow those wire marks, it gives a lot of character to the branch or the trunk. Okay. All junipers have this habit of producing these spiky long tips, and they don't usually look very nice in bonsai, so they're usually trimmed off. Remember, when you trim juniper, don't just shear it like that. Try and go into the wood and trim from the wood. Trim from the wood. Don't just shear it like that. Look carefully and trim from the wood. So that makes it the dense effect. Okay, now let's carry on wiring and taking this to the top. I'm trying to match similar thickness branches so that it will be compatible. With this thickness wire, I have to find another thick branch. So this is a thick branch, so let's go up the trunk. And this is going to be the apex. I can still use that. And because it's thinner, I'm going to just do an open coil so that it's not strangling the branch too much. Open coil is just like a loop. Okay, assuming the wire is strong enough, it should stay in place. No harm if it goes up and comes down. It doesn't have to come out straight from the trunk. It can go up and then come down again. If the wire is not strong enough, we will apply a double coil. But that, I think, has stayed. I may apply a double coil to it. to save video time, I'm not going to show you all the wiring. The next pair of branches will be these two. Meanwhile, I'll continue wiring. So we've put about 3 pairs of wires to create the basic horizontal configuration. You see how nice and broad the triangular base is, and we've got the semblance of the triangle already. Now the question is, how many of these branches shall I continue to keep? There's always a temptation to see quick results, and by quick results I mean you want to see a tree which is fairly full. So I will still try and keep as many as possible. If the design is looking a bit awkward, I will then decide to take some off. But I'm inclined to take this off, but if I take it off it makes the tree too bare. But I will try and keep it and make it looking full. So I will do that and achieve the wiring like this. This I may take off because I've got enough sacrificials there. See, it's coming out at an awkward angle here. It doesn't serve any purpose. If I use this as a front, this is a nice welcoming branch, so this let's get rid of. But I can make cuttings from this. No point even keeping it as gins. I can just keep a stub. Now for those who are interested in make cuttings, this is the ideal size of cutting, like a matchstick or a toothpick, and with a heel cutting. I guarantee you our Chinese junipers 90% strike rate. That means 9 out of every 10 should strike. So all these will make cuttings. Don't waste it. Okay, so we've opened out the front. So I'm going to do this, and then we will see where we go. I have here Tyler, who is one of our relatively new staff, and I'm teaching him how to wire.
Should I double wrap it?
Yes, double it. Test it to see if it holds. Yeah, hold it with 2 hands. So you can see the evolution of the triangular shape. Now these upward growing branches I need to deal with, so I'm going to wire these out like this. All these will be wired so that they can be wired horizontal. This area here is very, very dense, and if I weren't to control it, I might lose the shape completely. In fact, I've just seen something else. No, it might look quite nice. No, I think I will keep that shape. So there's too much going on here. I will just thin some of these branches. I want to make horizontal pads. So anything which is not horizontal, I will take off. Also, if I let this get too thick, it may cause inverse taper there. Watch that. In fact, I've noticed something else. Rather than keep taking a thick branch forward, I'll use one of the new young side shoots rather than use the thick branch right to the very end. So let me show you what I mean. You see there's one very thick shoot like that. I can take this as the new shoot, so I will get rid of this bit. Seems a bit drastic, but I'm going to do that. You see, so I get a finer branch. So let's do like an open coil and take the fine branch forward, like so. And then these should be wired flat to make them like pads in a pad formation. So all these have to be wired. There's lots of wiring to do. So if I want to make this a pad, anything downwards I can get rid of, and just wire these flat. Wire these flat. So these will be wired flat like that to make the pad. Now what about the one at the back? See, that I'm going to keep because that can be used as a sacrificial. Maybe not as long as that. So these will all be wired. Can you see these branches springing up? So these will be wired. So when I've finished wiring it, I'll show you the tree again. Okay? So this is where we've got to. And I never liked the thing shooting straight up. It's like, you know, how the American Indians used to have a feather in the cap going straight up like that. It's better to bring it back on itself and make a crown like that. Always much better that way. Okay, so that will grow branches and fill out. So what we can now do is tip the end so that it won't keep getting extended. It will get more dense. So that basically is the structure of the tree. Let me just point out a few little points. These will continue to be sacrificials. I can keep those. You see how I've taken that branch, which was below this one, up and then down. A lot of people feel that they have to have a branch coming straight out of the trunk. You don't have to do it like that. You can always go up and then create another level. So that is something worth pointing out. This again I did up and then another level. So I've created this triangular shape, and I bet you anything, in a year's time, it will be a nice, full, very solid looking bonsai. Okay, so that is one style. I know a lot of other people will say that, oh, you should have used the thin branches. There is a case for using thin branches, but some people like the look like this. And for good measure, I'm going to show you in the next video how we're going to tackle a tree in a different situation. Let me bring this tree still, keep the camera running there, and I'm going to show you. I have so many trees that I can pick and choose what I like. Okay, this is another good one. This I planted in this plastic training pot. So here I've got a situation where almost similar to those, but I have some very nice usable branches there. So if I were to not use the thick branches, these are thick branches, what would I do? Let me very quickly wire these thinner branches in place and then see where we get to. We position the branches so that they continue to grow outwards rather than growing upwards in the traditional V shape that Blaauws juniper and all junipers tend to grow. Zigzag of the branch. And then now, as I told you, a lot of people don't like these thick branches, so I don't like doing it because that is not my style. So let us get rid of this. Get rid of the thick branches. Even this one. What a waste. A lot of cuttings. That one I'm going to make gins with them. From the back, a lot of thick branches. More thick branches. Oh, it makes me cry. Look at that. That's more than 60% of the tree. That's why I don't like doing that. Even that one really should go. So we're down to this. Alright, so let me very quickly take you through what I would do with this. You've gathered by now that I'm not a great lover of gins. Okay, so we will wire these in place. Wire that in place. I think I can bend that, so let me just split that trunk, make it more artistic. The trunk splitter. This really is all had. Those of you who've been watching videos, not just on this channel but other channels, will know that by now. We all know that we prefer to use thin branches rather than thick branches to get the instant effect. Get it more to scale. I didn't need to teach you how to make gins. You just make a partial cut and then strip the branch back. I want to bend this like that so that I get more curvature in the trunk. So I will anchor it to one of these branches here. The two-branch principle, remember, is simply a means of anchoring. So even if I'm wiring the main trunk, I've still got to anchor to something. Can't emphasize enough the importance of keeping the wire tight. If it is loose, it's going to be floppy, it grates around the bark, not so effective. You can take it to any of these branches. Doesn't mean that that will be the leader, it may not end up as the leader. Nice bender. Turning to be a bit thick. I may keep it, I may not. Some more, pair them up. This is too thick. Very important to use the right gauge of wire. Okay, this should do. Junipers do thicken very quickly, so you've got to keep an eye on the wire in case it bites too much. That's if you don't want the wire marks. Some people deliberately create wire marks on the trunk. I may not be very popular saying this, but that is my way of working. Don't be afraid to do different things. Just because everyone does one thing does not mean that you have to be like sheep and follow them. This is going to be quite a long video because we've talked about the different types of junipers, the Blaauws junipers, and we're showing you how to create bonsai with Blaauws. So you can see how the shape is coming along. So this is a case where I've not used the very thick branches, I've used fairly thin branches. And let us see what happens if we do that. This is a very thick branch. I don't want to keep that. So tempting to keep it. There are lots of nice thin branches to use. So we will just wire all of them. And when we've wired it, we will show you the final end result. So here we are, the two subjects. I decided to do completely different ones because this is the traditional way of showing what you can do with most conifers, and the juniper is no different. So this is the one I've used thick branches to make a big full tree, very fulsome, big sized tree. And this one a more elegant, small branches but thick trunk tree. And when you think that this has only been done in 1 hour, we did 2 trees, so that's not doing bad, isn't it? So we can refine the gins. I haven't bothered to do it completely, but you can imagine for yourself what needs to be done. I usually like to just show you the basic principles, and the refining I leave you to imagine how we would finish it, because the object is to show you the actual principles rather than show you the detail. So there you are. This is how we end up doing that. And some people don't like too much gin. I don't usually like too much gins. If you don't like too much gin, you can cut them off, but at least you have the choice of using it. I usually think that gin is really like cheating, because you don't know what to do with the branches, so you leave it. So you can take it off if you wish, but some people like to have it. So there you are, you have the choice, and these are 2 trees. Now we'll do something else. We now have another situation. They're all the Blaauws juniper, and again this vase shape, and it has 2 major trunks and lots of thick branches. So what do we do with this? Let's look at each of these in turn. I always like to think that if you gave 10 trees of the same species to 10 different people, you'll get 10 different solutions. So it's not that one is correct and one is wrong. They will all come out different. So what is the first thing I do? These are in our black flower pots. I notice that some people like to cut the flower pot like that so that they can get at the root. I don't like cutting flower pot because it's very wasteful and you can't use the flower pot again. Once you cut it, you're generating more plastic waste. So those of you who work for me, I don't want to see that done. Right, what I can easily do is take it out of that and put it in one of these Japanese training pots, because all I want to really see is the base of the tree. So why cut the flower pot? Okay, I'll save that pot to use again. So look at that beautiful twin trunk situation there. And if we turn the tree around, you can always see which is the better side. There are more branches at the back. So I think this more or less lends itself to having this as the front. Because there are 2 prominent trunks, I could make it like a twin trunk tree. So why don't we do that? So we can part this a little bit There are some crossing branches there. I probably won't need that one. So let's cut that off. What a shame. You grow all this and then cut it off. Cut that off. Oh, look at these long shoots. More than 2 foot long. Lots and lots of branches. Now I'm beginning to start working overtime in my mind. Shall I make it a full tree like I did before with the big branches, or shall I adopt the method of using the thin branches? The choice is mine really. But because this is crossing, if I'm to use a double trunk situation, I don't think that branch would be very useful. So I get rid of this one. You see how fast my mind is working. You know, I have to keep making decisions all the time. I can still do the big branch situation. I know I won't need it that long. Mind you, all this growth has taken place in 1 year. I didn't cut any of it back while it was growing because I wanted it to feed back into the trunk to make the tree strong. I could try the thick trunk solution. Inward pointing branches I may not need. Okay, why don't I part the trunk a little bit? Okay, I'll use the thickest possible wire and I'm going to wire it out. I don't think we need the big branches. Why not? Let's see what happens. I think the thin branch situation everyone does. So let's be different. Let's be different. Let's utilize the big branches and see the effect of that. So I'm going to wire similar thickness branches. These two, these two, these two, and these two. So I'm not going to show you the detailed wiring. Perhaps I'll show you just one of them because wiring will just take up unnecessary time. I think like a lot of people like to see the thought process behind the decision making. When styling these sort of trees, what people find most difficult is deciding what to cut, where to go. And once that bridge has been crossed, everything falls into place. So let us see what happens. Never be afraid to do the unconventional. Just because everyone does something in one way, it doesn't mean that you have to slavishly copy that. Don't be afraid of being different. Okay, let's do a little twist to the branches. These are all standard techniques. You know, when you have a long straight branch, just do a zigzag like that. Shortens the branch, makes it more interesting. And then we can shorten it a little more should we want to. So let me wire another pair of branches. So I'm going to do all that. I might as well show you the lot. Let me use some old recycled wire. I'm a great believer in using old stuff. what we're doing now is wiring every possible branch in sight, and once they're wired, it's just a question of arranging the branches in position. So that's what we are doing at the moment. Okay, not rocket science, certainly not rocket science. So we've put wire on all the branches that can be wired. So basically the design is going to be a twin trunk, and let's see what we get. I said a moment ago that we would keep all these long branches to see what the effect is like. The simple solution was really to use the thin branches and not bother with the thick branches, but I like the look of a fuller tree, so I will keep the full tree look just by wiring all the branches in place. That gives you a better idea as to where you're going. So it's just arranging the branches to fit the style. I like to keep as many branches as possible should you want to use them. If you want to revert to just using thin branches, you still have the option to do it. So looking at it, look at it, it's quite a reasonable twin trunk style, different from what we've done before. So there you go, twin trunk style, and we'll put it in a temporary bonsai pot, and there you go. That didn't take long, took very little time. So that's another situation. So every tree is going to be different. Okay, I'll move that out of the way. Let's stop this and I'll show you yet another one. Now we have yet another one. As I said to you, plants are like human beings almost. Every plant is different. So again, let me not cut the flower pot. I will just take it out of its pot and put it in a Japanese clay training pot, and let's see what we can make of this. This has got a lovely trunk. It's got a lovely curve to it. I can still utilize some of these branches as sacrificials, but there are so many branches at that point you could start getting inverse taper. This is a very natural leader, so these very thick branches here I should really take off. I may just keep it as a stub in case anyone wants to make gin from it. Remember that because I run a nursery, I have to always look a little further than my own tastes. It's very easy to get carried away and say, oh, this is what I like, and this is perhaps what everyone else would like. It doesn't work like that. You've got to bear in mind that what you like is not what everyone else likes. So my customers may not like it. So let me just see what I can get. I want to emphasize the sinuous nature of this trunk. Sinuous meaning it is curvy, lovely curves to it. Look at that lovely curve there. See, natural curve without doing anything to it. And those branches at the back may be a bit too thick. That is a bit too thick. Let's get rid of that. Some of these we will reduce a little bit. Want a lot of cuttings from there. I'm determined to use them for cuttings. I don't like waste. Okay, so it's simply wiring. I can keep some of these as sacrificial to thicken the trunk even more. So without going into the complexities of wiring, can you see the shape? If you go further back, you can see I'm going to try and create a triangular shape with this as the base, and this is going to come back like that. I will perhaps do some rudimentary wiring to show you what happens. So I'm going to wire everything else. Okay. So here we have Tyler finishing off that tree. So we've just wired all branches in pairs, triangular shape with a single leader. This happens to be a single trunk blows, which is not usually the case because blows tend to have multiple trunks. I will just tweak it a little more. If you can just hold the camera for me, I'm just going to tweak it by shortening some of the branches. The conical shape. I'm leaving these to go as sacrificials. It may help to thicken the branch. We've done a little gin there, and we've taken that to the back. Too many branches, they're too long. All these branches at the back could end up as sacrificials. That means they will eventually get cut off. So this is the front of the tree, single trunk tree like that. And we put it in a pot, and then we will show you all the different styles that we've made. Okay. So today we've done 4 large Blaauws junipers, and between Tyler and myself working, I would say about 2.5 hours, we've done 4, and I show you what they started off from. This is the typical raw, untrained Blaauws juniper that we have on the nursery. We have hundreds of these, and they are grown from these smaller Blaauws, which are still £19, extremely good value, but these are much more. These are much older trees, so they've had about another 10 or 12 years growth on them. And we also put them in these plastic training pots, and we just grow them in the pots to get the roots spreading to fill the pot rather than having to repot it. But it doesn't matter, you can do that at any stage. So that is the second stage. And when we've done that, we then shape the tree. So we've done 4 completely different trees. So if I can remind you what we did, this is the one using the wide branches, using all the branches without cutting any branches. This is the one which is the more common one, which a lot of people have learned now, I notice on other YouTube channels. So this is keeping the thin branches, getting rid of the thick ones, keeping the thick branches for gins, and you get this sort of slim effect. Now again, using all the branches, we got a twin trunk situation. So we got a twin trunk tree out of this because there were 2 very prominent trunks. And the 4th example, and this is a case where we had a single trunk. So we used the single trunk to create the classic S-shaped tree, and these branches will fill out. By next year this will completely fill out. So we've got 4 very viable trees for you to use, and there you go.